Well, insightful content by Johnny Hughes, Johnny's Bites, the People's Bite. And make sure that you join us on social media. We have TV3 Ghana across all social media platforms, and always go with the hashtag TV3Newday. And I encourage you to add Johnny's Bites, the People's Bite. As you do that, make sure you also share. Let's have some good traction on the content we're delivering, because that's what we do here at Media General. And we want to also put the matters into perspective, because it's been 3 days of traders, and they're just not normal traders. They, along the value chain, are importers, wholesalers, retailers, and subsequently those who tend to take also from the retailers trading. Before we do that, let me just tell you what we're going to do, situating that conversation. So we have in the studio Professor Lord Mensah. He is a finance professor at the University of Ghana Business School, my alma mater, and thank you for joining me. Well, great one as well. We always have you on Zoom, and so once in a while when you come to the studio, we love it.
Oh, yes.
You might have woken up early today.
I woke up early. Today I don't even have a cab. I have to get here by
Allah, ilallah. That's why if we had a good public transport system, would have helped.
It would have helped. I would have parked my car at the mall and just jump up on the big bus and get here.
Yeah, follow him closely. Is also a gentleman who is willing always when we call on him. He is with the economics department of the University of Ghana, so they all work together. And as great economists, we have to give them the hearing, because academic freedom is what is also going to complement our development as a country. Dr. Edu Owusu-Sarkodie is a regular right here on the channel. He's joined us live as well. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, you didn't park your car, did you?
No.
But all the same,
heavy traffic.
Yeah, all the same. So you have to avoid it and wake up early.
Wake
all
up
the
early,
same.
yes.
Yeah. I've noticed that many of you now teaching Lagos don't live on campus. You live off campus.
Yeah, because of the numbers,
Okay.
the accommodation space
Yeah.
is not enough to accommodate all of us.
Yeah. Well, it's all the same. Once we have a good pattern of mindset to develop, that's what we want to do. So we'll be situating the conversation. But let's take you to Kumasi. It's the third day. William Evans Inkum has been monitoring the situation since the traders decided to lock their shops. And again, Kumasi and the rest of Ashanti is the stronghold of the governing New Patriotic Party and the party of the president. And Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, as he received a doctorate, wouldn't have been happy at all. But William, you're joining us this morning. What can you tell us? I can see behind you, we have those gates, if not doors, iron doors locked. What is the justification from the traders still?
Well, the justification has not been different from what they have been complaining about within the last couple of days for like 48 hours. This is the third day, and they are still not backing down as far as pressing home their concern. I mean, one has to do with the fact that they are not happy about the current tax regime. He's talking about 18.5% tax. And even to add more salt to injury, they are also saying that some officers from the Ghana Revenue Authority have been stationed in their shops, various shops or respective shops, just to ensure strict enforcement of this particular policy. Something they have, described as alien and also draconian as far as this new directive is concerned. Of course, they've also been talking about the fact that the city has been plummeting with the dollar skyrocketing, something that is also affecting their profit margin. So they are selling, but they are not making profit. They are only making losses. And these are the concern that they've been raising. Yesterday, they were supposed to meet with the JRA and then find a makeable solution to this impasse, but that did not happen because that particular meeting ended inconclusive. So one would say, aluta continua. They are continuing their strike today.
But their strike or the closure of those doors of their shops would have great effects on their customers or residents of Kumasi. On the other hand, how are they feeling the pinch?
Well, so it's a double sword, or a double-edged sword, if I should put it that way. The greatest impact negatively will be the Kumasi Metropolitan Assembly, because this is giving them, or this particular enclave is giving the assembly some 40% of their revenue generation. they're talking about the business operating license. We're talking about the property rate. We're talking about the store license. These are annual, commitments. But when you talk about the daily tolls, which is of course taken from the retailers, these are daily revenue that go to the assembly. It means that there's going to be a break of that particular revenue flow as far as the current situation is concerned. That will mean a lot to the Kumasi Metropolitan Assembly because they run the business activities on this particular toll. It more or less become like a financial oxygen for the Kumasi Metropolitan Assembly. So that is not coming, and that means a lot to them. For the annual commitment, already they've taken that already. So if in terms of the expenditure, probably they might have spent them. But what about the daily toll that will have to go to the assembly? That means a lot to them. Now, aside Kumasi Metropolitan Assembly, if you're looking at other effects, of course, we are talking about the buyers. I said that there are some buyers are largely coming from the northern part of the country. We're talking about those coming from the Bono East region, those coming from the Bono Ahafo, and then the other 3 regions in the north, or 4 regions in the north. So they come here to buy in bulk and also go there and then do their retail business. Since Monday, some of them have been very disappointed, especially Monday when they didn't know that they were going to pay in a situation like this. Some came, they had to sleep over, hoping that there was going to be a change in the narrative on Tuesday, but that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Well, I've spoken to a few people that I met on Monday, Tuesday. They were here with me, and they have been talking about how they had to, spend, kind of commit some kind of spontaneous spending as far as this whole situation is concerned. It's also affecting, the amount of money that they brought in here to purchase these goods. So it's really a hard pill for these guys.
Well, William, we know that you're monitoring the situation, and you subsequently on other news segment programs to give us the latest updates as far as this is related. And William Evansinkum is chief of bureau in Kumasi or the Shanti region and monitoring the situation for us. And it's not palatable at all. Let me go with you, Professor Lord Mensah. You have this. Is it a signal that the government needs to take seriously because it's in the stronghold of the governing party beyond just the economic metrics or sentiments?
Yes, it is. Clearly, looking at Kumasi and then the environs, what is happening now won't affect Ashanti region alone. Looking at the proximity of Ashanti region to Brahafo and all the other regions around. Clearly, that's the Kumasi itself serves the north as well. Tamale, most of the economic feet.
So you're saying it's like the interconnecting business hub?
Exactly. So I think the government needs to be careful, how they handle this. But then what is causing this, which I think it could have been managed very well, has to do with the way and manner, the fiscal presence of the tax authorities at their doorstep, Tax policies, I would say we have taken them for granted. And we think, okay, once we read in the budget that we're going to introduce tax, we can go ahead with whichever mechanism to, collect the taxes as needed. Sometimes the sensitization of the people that this time round, we're not going to be the normal procedures that we normally use in collecting our taxes. We know the country has to, depend on the taxes. And of course, looking at the economic situation now and looking at our revenue, generation, obviously we need the taxes. But going to their doorstep, sometimes may create that kind of inconvenience. And they're agitating on this because possibly you did not educate them well. You did not get them to know that, okay, fine. The usual way of you walking to the tax office is no more. We are coming to your doorstep to make sure that you comply. It's something that you have to give them some room, lift their expectations to a level where when you get there, they can manage the situation. Another thing that they're also drumming about is the exchange rate, which for me, I think it has to do with the the dynamics that we face now. And if you look at the situation we have with our exchange rate now, it's not about demand and supply, which government should wait for the market to determine the levels. It's about time we go into kind of interventional approach in controlling, this.
Meaning the Cedi has spiraled out of control.
It has spiraled out of control, but then we also have to look at how we control it ourselves. Because if you allow the market, which is demand and supply, to keep the dynamics, you may go off board. Because for now, the way it is going, we need that kind of interventional, approach. In management of foreign currency, you can allow the market to control the dynamics, or we can have that kind of interventional approach where the central bank government can say that I'm instituting mechanism that traders can have access to the dollar, but then at a peg price. I mean, we have what we call the forward market, which the Bank of Ghana for some time ago was drumming about. The volumes of trade that are going on there, I think the last time I checked was 50 million US dollars. I think they can improve on that because it will give the trader that kind of confidence that even if I will need $1 in the next 3 months, I can still have it at $10, going forward. So why should I rush on the market to go for it? So these are mechanisms that can be put in place to ensure that
specialized group hedging of the way the exchange rate should
That's right. So what is happening in Kumasi? Yes, of course, we know the economic repercussions and the political repercussions. And I always say that you cannot dissociate economics from politics. I mean, the policymaker is the politician, and then the politician ensures that we get the dynamics that we have in every economy. So effectively it has impact, it will have impact, looking at it being a stronghold for the current administration.
And if you look at the chain, because policy would have to come from leadership or government, it also means that the way it's implemented would have to be done in a way that there's a certain buy-in. And this follows closely from last November when the announcement was made for e-levy.
Yeah.
So again, it's about policy birthing and then doing stakeholder engagement at the formulation stage.
Sure.
Then you implement.
Yeah.
And it looks like they've gotten it wrong as well. And already we're being told that we've only been able to mop up some 328 million of e-levy since we started the implementation. We started very late.
Sure.
Having tax officials at the doorstep of people, is it that there's this rebuff because of socio-cultural dynamics, or there's a general uproar about how the economic dynamics of Ghana are being managed by this leadership or the managers?
I think it's a combination of factors. The good tenets of taxation is that taxes are imposed, not discussed. But you must make sure that you do your homework well at the back room, after which you impose. At a point where you experience so much noise around the implementation, then you should know that you have failed. Because the noise itself, as somebody would say, the noise itself will bring in so many nuances around the implementation, also the acceptability of the citizenry. And it is not only with the e-levy. If you take a look at the luxury tax, was a similar situation. The 50% benchmark values, similar situation. So this back and forth of
So they always get it wrong?
Not always, but of these examples, yes, they got it wrong. And it looks like not much research was made into these policies. You must, first of all, as in economics, you always do the cost-benefit analysis. This is a level 400 coursework. Every level 400 student will do it, because it's more or less the basis for implementing any policy or any project. You do your analysis, do your calibrations, do your regressions, and see whether, okay, if I increase it to 2, this will be the response. If I increase it to 3, this will be the response. If I implement it this way, this should be the response. So that homework usually is very important. And when you are doing it, as Prof said, you must engage the stakeholder. Before the implementation, you do not implement before you engage them. And I heard somebody, or a tax official says that somebody marries before going for marriage counseling. This is how it looks like. You must go for the counseling before you marry. And so if you implement it before engaging them, then it becomes like we are resisting it. You know, like you are coming to pickpocket us, take money out of our pockets, and that is not the best way to go. So we must make sure, I think government must make sure that the implementation, before the implementation, they discuss with the stakeholders, do all the calibrations, do all the analysis before implementation. You see, Ghanaians and tax paying, when I was in level 4, one of my course projects was to do this tax filing of tax returns. And one of the things that I learned at the tax official's office was that this is more like an idea or a thinking which has been passed on to our generation from the colonial masters, because in the colonial times, they felt like they were taking our money to enrich themselves. And so people were evading and avoiding.
So
and
we
the
had
same,
like the
and
poll
the,
tax.
yeah, and the same attitude has been handed down to us in our generation, evading, avoiding.
The up-bottom approach is not working.
Yeah, the attitude towards tax
Not learning about the socio-cultural dynamics.
Yeah, yes, the attitude is not.
The behavior of the people.
The behavior
now,
of
I'm not
people,
stopping you there.
yes.
We decided to do some little investigation on the current trends because the next question is closely linked with the behavior, if not the position of these traders. Because apart from Accra, now we have, based on my observation, the importers, wholesalers, and retailers, those along the chain, who ideally would have occupied Accra, now being Kumasi. They are able to afford the flights. You go to the airport Monday to Sunday, Africa World, Passion, they're all booked to Kumasi. Okay? And then it means that they are gathering at a center, they are becoming the interconnecting economy within the middle belt. If we're taking that consideration, we should be concerned about what usually they use in their trade. And so the forex losses have hit them hard. I'll show you a screenshot we took at the airport. And it's about the currency and the rate as it is. You see it presently, and for you viewers out there, if you're joining us, the US dollar is being sold at 11.1, and this one is a selling. But they will buy from you at 10.7. It means that now we're out in the forest. And these traders, they come from, whether it's China, Dubai, they do the interconnecting, wherever they're going, are feeling the pinch. They're having the first time experiences. Why then shouldn't have government and the tax authorities taking them more seriously? Or should they be taken seriously?
They should take them more seriously. I mean, when you are doing business, you need these inputs. Nobody wants to do business and make losses. Everybody wants to do business and make profits. And then if you look at the location of Kumasi, I have lived in Kumasi for a long time before relocating to Accra. It is really connected to so many parts of the country, more like the center of the country in terms of businesses. And Kumasi people take their businesses very serious. So if you are doing business and you are making losses, then you wouldn't want to be in business. And so I think that the government should take them very serious with this exchange rate management so that they can stay in business, because the informal sector is what is holding this economy. 80% in terms of GDP, in terms of revenue, in terms of employment, they're all coming from these sectors. Now the shops are locked. The employees may be home by now. They will not receive their daily wages or something. So the government should really take these things seriously and manage it, sit down with them, sit down with their, I think, if they have association, I mean, government should now be engaging with the leadership of their association so that we can resolve the issue within the shortest possible time, because the effect on the economy will be too much to handle.
Well, later on, after the discussion, we'll have Elvis Ifriankra, current director of elections for the NDC, also joining Johnny Hughes for a bigger discussion. I know some of these things will be discussed, but we decided to bring all these knowledgeable people for us to have a bigger, dispassionate conversation. And joining us also virtually on Zoom is the Dean of the University of Cape Coast Business School, Professor John Gachi. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Great. So the question I put to you is, it looks like we haven't gotten all that rhetoric or perhaps the objective that we've always had, either in the Fourth Republic or over the last 15 years, of taxing or collecting the right tax amount from the informal economy, right? And so we keep failing at it. And why is that?
Well, I think the informal economy provides a progressive contribution to tax revenue. And you cannot take all the taxes that the informal economy can contribute to the tax basket at a go. So it will continue to be a continued process. The informal economic activity will continue to emerge. It is left with the revenue authorities and the fiscal management authorities to devise means by which they can attract those operating within the informal economy into the tax basket. We also need to appreciate the fact that it is not absolutely true that the informal economy does not contribute to the tax revenue mobilization of the country. We have devised various means by which we allow those operating in the informal sector to do so. What is not clearly available is how to formalize the revenue collection through a formalized activity by the informal sector. And that is what we keep contributing to enhancing from time to time.
Because what we're experiencing currently is linked directly to how the city is performing. And for those who are in business, I don't know whether he's your rival or your colleague, Professor Steve Hank of the Johns Hopkins Uni is always on the neck of our finance minister, saying he's poorly managing the economy.
Calculating his own inflation.
Yes. Well, you can call it his own inflation. But what I do have, he's pegging us in the region of poorly performing economies like Zimbabwe. Then you have Cuba, Sri Lanka, Venezuela, and then the Ghana cities following. And then he goes on to describe us as having a junk one. The screenshot that has the Bank of Ghana governor would also come on your screen. And you keep wondering. So while we show you that, he says the Ghanaian city is junk. It has been since January 2020. All right. So it also means that we have to find a certain solution to this. You mentioned that the solution has to be what?
Yes, of course. It depends on how...
He's advocating a currency board.
Exactly.
But I don't know.
It depends on how you look at it. You see, if you look at the dynamics of the city, it has some long-term trajectory that we've never, coming down. We've never come down. It's always, going up.
I don't understand. So you mean that we shouldn't be comforted that the rate will come down?
Not at all. The rate will not come down. But hold on. You see, if you look at the dynamics, every year we penetrate a new discrete number. So you will see that this year we'll be at 8. The next year we are moving at 11. The next year we are going to 12. In between these numbers, we're able to control it with the inflows of, the loans that we get. So you're talking about Eurobond, we're talking about syndicated loans and all those. So you will see that even though you see a wiggle that is, going up and down, there is an upward trend, which shows that there is a structural, issue. So if you ask me the solution, we have to look at long-term solution, short-term solution, and a medium-term solution.
Now we need short-term.
Yeah, we need a short-term solution. The short-term solution is that Bank of Ghana should take some drastic measures. Some drastic measures in a sense that who are the demanders of the dollar in this economy? Government, 1. 2, businesses. And then 3, individuals who wants to use it for transactions. Government is the biggest demander of the dollar, for which most of the obligations of the government, you cannot stop them. They are mandatory. So something like interest payment that we're supposed to do for this year, government will demand dollars in this environment because we don't print dollars. Now, businesses need them for trading. Government one, you can't control. The business one that you can control. And let me tell you, some people are holding the dollar as a form of investment. There should be a drastic measure to convert some of this investment to cedis. Possibly give them extra premium. Because we are not in normal times. And being out of normal times, you have to make sure that you take drastic measures. And drastic measures, one of them will be that, one, some of the investment that are kept in dollars. I know a lot of people, a lot of businesses have, dollar accounts, which they just want an appreciation of the dollar. It's about time. That's why I mentioned earlier that we have to look at an interventional approach. An approach where we can say that, fine, all investment in dollars are supposed to be converted to cedis, but we are giving you some extra interest rate. That is one. Two, all those who will need a dollar in the next 3 to 4 months, pay a cedi premium, and they will peg the dollar for you. That's one of them. So effectively, we can put up these short-term measures to ensure that at least we control. And then the speculations. You see, this short-term movement has to do with speculations as well. And we have to make sure that we manage it. What assurance is the central bank and then the fiscal management authorities giving to Ghanaians that things will be fine, even though we are not in a normal, time?
In terms of what would you expect from the BOG, for example? Yeah,
from the BOG, at least some certainty, some information out there to give assurance that, okay, fine, we've had these loans, and be specific that the loans that we've gotten in terms of, the cedis will be able to meet the demand that we have. If we will not be able to meet the demand, this is how we are managing it. Let the people know. Because the information from the black room, which is the management at the top, to the ordinary consumer of the dollar is very, very key. So effectively, that is how I can say in the short term, we'll be able to manage it. Other than that, we have to look at long term, which we are not in there yet now. We have to look at the short term, how we can manage.
It reminds me of the president when he was campaigning. You heard about the phrase Gajisbegian economy.
That is a long term management.
I know. So before I come to you, Dr. Sarkodie, Professor Gachi, a currency board, how does it work? How did it work from 1958? And for which Professor Steve Hank of Johns Hopkins will be advocating within the remit of the situation?
Under normal circumstances, we don't. Can you hear me?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think under normal circumstances, bearing in mind the liberal economic activity that we engage in which we allow the market to determine prices. We do not ordinarily need the currency board, but I believe the one who was proposing is proposing because we are in a crisis. But I do not think that what we have got into, it is currency board that will salvage the economy.
What will salvage it?
We know what we have not been. That is what I'm coming to. We know that we have left a lot of things undone for a long time. Now, if you take the demand side and the supply side, what can we do in order to shore up supply of foreign currency? That has to do with what you do with your export, what you do with your production, what you do in terms of value addition. If you go to the demand side also, it comes to the same thing. What are the people looking for the money to import? Do you have the ability to put policy around those things to limit their import into the country? We have not done a single thing about these things. So if we come together until we get to the deep side of the issue and we want a short-term solution, it's like we are asking a question we will never get an answer. The short-term solution is that if we are to be keeping buffer appropriately in a reserve, then that is what we'll be using to calm the market as we pursue those agendas that I've outlined. But we are not in the business of keeping proper reserve and a buffer for the economy. So I think we need to face the truth and don't let us not pretend that there is some short-term solution as at now that we should proffer to resolve the problem. We have gone past that.
Well, Dr. Sarkodie, you take a look at how the demand side of the dollar against the cedi has always been. I think that from the education that I get, whether in school and from the literature and the education that you always give us, after the first quarter or within the first quarter, there's always a certain demand, so that that is projected for the second quarter, and then the last quarter of the year, there's always a higher demand because you have to bring in goods
for Christmas.
Yes, consumer spending for the holidays and then the beginning of the year. But I know we're in November, and from that education, I don't know what's like. We're in a pool. How do you tell the various indicators, and we're talking about the traders, those who will be demanding for it either for normal expenditure, whether locally or internationally, and even the GOG, that this is where we are. So come to grips with the terms, and then you have to do something in the short term. And what should that short term thing be?
Well, it is a very difficult situation that we find ourselves. It looks like all the short term solutions are not working. And it's difficult to control the demand side. If I want dollars to import goods from China, how are you going to stop me from doing that? So if I want dollars, then supply me with dollars. Other than that, people will find another way to do that. People can go to other countries and go and trade with them, go to Togo, go to Ivory Coast, and then bring the goods.
You mean all
in.
that is happening?
Yes. If they look at the strength of your cedi and they think they will make losses, then they think that if they go to trade or get the whatever from Togo or our neighboring countries and to make profit, they will do that. So it's difficult to control the demand side. So that is why it is important to place the emphasis on the supply side. And let me mention what goes into the supply side in the capital account: export revenue, borrowing, aid, grant, remittances, FDI, SDR or IMF, SDR. Now, I've mentioned about 7. Out of these 7, aid is no longer coming because Ghana is a middle-income economy. Grant is also no longer coming because Ghana is a middle-income economy. Remittances, I'm not sure. Maybe it's the FDI. SDR, we have already taken our $1 billion from the SDR, and so it's not coming. The exports, this first 9 months of this month, Ghana exported $11.8 billion. Out of this, $4.2 billion came from gold, $3.8 billion came from oil, $1.7 billion came from cocoa. Only cocoa has 100% retention. The remaining $8 billion, Ghana has no control over it.
Okay, so
about 30% of that is not retained.
So it means that
it
means that because cocoa is local, the money will come back.
Sure.
Yes, when you export, and that is why people have questioned why Cocoa Board should be making losses by now. Because when the exchange rate goes up, exporters gain. Those who receive remittances gain. And so Cocoa Board should not be making losses by now, but that's a different conversation. So I'm saying that the 4.2 billion from gold, 3.8 billion from oil, Ghana doesn't command even more than 20% of that. And you want 3 billion from IMF to stabilize your cedi. And so we must look at what goes into the supply side. Successive governments have tried to show up the value of the cedi with borrowing and or depleting the international reserves. So you use that to supply dollars. Now the international reserves, as at now, they cannot intervene anymore. Bank of Ghana cannot, because it's so low that they cannot go and deplete it. And then the only option left is to borrow. And the capital account is shut. Ghana government has not been able to go to the Eurobond market since January this year. On top of it, those who hold government bonds, sovereign bonds, are selling. Even the domestic ones, about 30% of the domestic bonds are held by foreigners, and they are also selling. So the supply side, in my view, should be where we should go to. Then the things I've mentioned, we should start hitting them now. In fact, this crisis gives us an opportunity to overhaul the economy, to give us a economic reform, total economic reform, so that we don't come back to this scenario again. Okay. The Bank of Ghana has been intervening. The recent policy rate increase was partly to, curb inflation, but also largely to make sure that the cedi doesn't depreciate. How? If you increase the policy rate, you want to increase the interest rate on government bonds so that domestic demanders and even foreigners would always hold on to government bonds and not sell. But it's not working. And so that is the problem we have in our hand.
Yeah. And Professor Benson, you wanted to add, but in 2019, yes, when you made all those predictions, which I know all of you simultaneously know in your minds and also echo among yourselves, you foresaw this. But the other thing is that you in academia, and for all of you who tend to look at the numbers and scrutinize them, it has to be about who is handling the economy and those giving policy advice, right?
Yes, of course.
What do we do with them? What should we do by way of decision on those who tend to manage to send a certain signal to the players locally and internationally? Because already...
Well, before I come in, I mean, I think we
you said something that you wanted.
Yes. You see, we are not in normal times. This is not a time to wait for remittance. And even the remittance, Doc, the global market, what is happening. Once things are going on elsewhere and it's not comfortable, people will not remit. So remittance at this time, I'm very sure it has reduced. Mm-hmm. Now you're looking at, other inflows. And you could see the global market is frozen on us. Now you ask yourself, how do we go about this? That is why I mentioned earlier that we need to intervene and control, the supply and demand of the dollar. Because whilst we are controlling and then, we put in measures and think about the long term, how we can ensure that we increase our production and then make sure that at least we can export and then bring in dollars, increase production to reduce certain, import that we're supposed to do. In a way, you are managing your foreign currency. So on that score, in the short term, I think we need some drastic measures to control, the cedi. But then, let me come back to your question. You see, when you take management, there's a difference between managing an economy and then putting yourself as part of the economy. And then also managing an economy, dissociating yourself from that management. You see, when you're managing, and you yourself forms part of that management, is a different ball game altogether. That is why when you come to the corporate level, we have what we call the owner-manager problems. The owner-manager problem is in such a way that you have the manager of a company who is still what? An owner. So his decision and all those sometimes may be geared towards his interest. And most of the time, I'm not surprised at the point in time we became what I called, loan maniac.
We're talking this in relation with the role that the lead manager of the economy, the finance minister.
Exactly. To a point where we became loan maniac, where we're just, borrowing to control our foreign currency, sacrificing our production and then, our export policies. And we know very well that, borrowing cannot be sustained. Even in our households, we cannot continue to borrow till we go on pension. If Ghana was to be a person, we should have been on pension now because we are 60 years and over. So at the point where we're borrowing and we're getting closer to pension, we should have asked ourselves, what have we done with the borrowing? So that we can control, the things that we've brought the money in-house to do. So effectively, it tells you that at the point where we're going on borrowing, and we're not investing in any, export-oriented investment, it should tell you that there will be a point where we will struggle to manage our foreign currency. So effectively, I would say that when we're managing, we shouldn't put ourselves too much in the management. Otherwise, we'll create, troubles for the country.
Professor Gachi, you look at our balance of trade, and it's been a concern for all of us. In 2020, we achieved a surplus, so we're happy, but it's because the borders were shut. So it was an artificial indicator that we recorded. The traders in Kumasi, and I know they have businesses also in Accra, they are all having businesses in Okanshi, Aboso-Okanshi, they're the same people, right? So they are talking to themselves. Is it practicable to take a decision? Let's say the finance minister, and then also through the Bank of Ghana by way of the monetary side, take a decision and say there are demands for goods. These goods needed by consumers will come from Asia, Southeast Asia, elsewhere in Europe or America. While we acknowledge that we want to put some moratoriums, is it feasible? I know that we're not in military regimes, or let's say in such economies where you take such drastic action. Is it possible? Because all of you are telling me that the short term is off. We can do something, but the short term is off.
It's not working.
It's not working, so it's off. It's not working. Yeah. So we have to focus on the medium to long term. So we should get wet in the rain, absorb this rainfall, but knowing that there will be sunshine at the end of the day. So is it possible for us to take these decisions, moratoriums on goods that will come from somewhere, just to make sure that we keep the currency stable? And if you demand your rice, you go and take maize somewhere from the Volta or Central region or wherever you can find it. I mean, practicable decisions. And tell the traders, engage them and tell them, you can't bring in your rice or you can't bring in your spare parts.
No, you shut down the...
Well, that is not a practicable solution. And the reason is very simple. You have started with about 30% production of rice in the country. You started scaling that up. You disrupted it. Even the rice that is being produced is more expensive than the imported one. So it is not easy for a staple food like rice. You immediately stop importation when production is not scaled up, and a cost efficiency in terms of production is not available. So you can only do that when you are scaling up production for those staple foods and at the same time reducing the appetite for importation. That we have not been able to do. It's as if we are not committed to some of these fine policies that we put in place in the past. Even when you go to some places, the local rice you're talking about is a mixture of some amount of local rice and some amount of imported rice. So importation is still on the high. So to all of a sudden come and say that we are placing moratorium on importation of staple food, it means that you want to use the exchange rate difficulty to create political instability. And I'm not sure government will attempt such a thing. Again, when you are managing, because of sensitive nature of exchange rate volatility, when you are managing it, your measures should not create panic and repulsive response from the constituent affected by the strategy you are adopting. That is one of the key lessons involved in currency management because of how sensitive it is to many things that we do. So I think, in my opinion, when you target staple foods, it will backfire. It can create bigger problems than you expect. And we also need to appreciate that the traders are only expressing the views of Ghanaians. When they manage to import a small quantity and price high, it is Ghanaians who are buying. And all the feeling across the countries, that is what is packaged into the closure of shops, etc., that the traders are doing. So it's a national expression of how exchange rate volatility is impacting on the Ghanaian economy. We need to appreciate it from that perspective also.
Okay. That said, let's say if it was Dr. Kwame Nkrumah as president, he was somebody who had an imperialist approach to things. Mm-hmm. He had long-term policy interventions because he foresaw many of the things. We didn't have the patience. But now we need to tell the people that, for example, a good friend of mine made an investment and lost 50,000 Ghana cedis a day on that investment. just because of forex losses.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
For somebody like him, and he's high up, he has people he employs, he pays social security, other taxes. Those dependents also have dependents. Okay, but how do we bring the conversation to them to say these are not the decisions we have to take, but then we have to be nationalistic in our approach to demand of basic consumer goods, but rather make the alternatives, knowing that it is a slow process, as indicated by Professor John Gachi, because I mean the rice fields are not local after all.
Well, when people have developed taste for
Yes.
certain
So how
products-
do we quench that over time? Maybe in the short, can we have a short-term approach to this?
Well, the problem is very big. I think we have sat down as a country more like we hate everything Ghanaian. Take clothing, take food, take everything. I don't know why we have developed this taste for foreign goods. And if we don't start now, and that's why I was happy with this one district, one factory thing. I thought it was going to
It's not
improve
working. Don't talk about it. It's not working.
manufacturing. Yeah, but we have to go the manufacturing way. We have to try as a country. As Prof said, if you want to curtail importation of rice and you have not increased production, you're just going to create further crisis in the economy. And therefore, I think as Ghanaians, we must begin to understand that this is a problem. Let the government, the policymakers, appreciate that this is a crisis that we are facing as a country. I want to hear from the president. I want to hear from the finance minister. I want to hear from the economic management team. They must sit down with us, give us the speeches, tell us what is going on, sit down with the union leaders, the trade union leaders. Tell us, engage with the media. When was the last time you had this presidential media engagement? You know, it's about time we had these conversations. And I applaud TV3 for inviting professors around to share our views. But it's not limited to us. It should be everybody on board. We must have that national conversation. We have sat down as a country, looked on, and thinking that all is well. All is not well. We have depended on importation, that Georgesburg economy that you told us since 1927, the economy where they said you cannot produce anything locally, just extract your resources and your raw materials, export to us, we will manufacture and bring it back to you. As the president of Rwanda said, you go and give it some blessing and you bring it back to us to buy. That dynamic must change. If we don't change it, then we will come here, Roland, when we are 60 years, we will still come here and talk about this problem, and it will not go. Secondly, the extractive sector. I think the natural resource is a blessing to us. It's supposed to be our assets, but we have given it freely.
You mean it's supposed to have been a blessing?
Yes, it's supposed to have been a blessing. It's supposed to have been our assets. And this is how I understand the president's speech that it is scarce to come there, but it is scarce to near there.
He's doing worse.
And yet it's scarce. I mean, I'm talking about the extractive sector. Ghana is so rich with gold and all these natural resources. And I have given you several examples. We did a calculation and a research into the extractive sector between 2011 and 2018. The economic rent, this is the economist's way of calculating profit, the economic rent alone amounted to $43 billion. That's about $5 billion a year. And Ghana got only 10.4% of that. We have given away our natural resources. Royalties. These mining companies are paying 5% royalties. It's a shame on us. We should be ashamed as Ghanaians to be receiving 5% royalties. That royalties within the shortest possible time must be increased to about 7, 8, 10%.
Holding.
Yes.
Shareholdership.
We should capture these natural resources. We have seen countries, Norway, Saudi Arabia, they are big countries. Okay, come to Africa. We have seen what Botswana has done.
The UAE.
To transform their economies with the natural resources. We should be holding more than 50% of the participation interest in all natural resources. As we speak, Ghana has just 16% in the oil, and I think about 10% in the gold. We have given our natural resources away. People are making profit out of it, and we are gaining nothing. And we are crying about Cedi depreciation, because whenever your Cedi depreciates, it will affect everything. You are exporting 8 billion only from 2. $8 billion only from gold and oil. And I understand that the excess demand of forex is about 3 billion, but you are exporting 8 billion in 9 months. $8 billion. And what do you have? Nothing. Almost nothing. You command about 20% of that 8 billion. And so it's a shame on us as Ghanaians. And I have told you that we must take advantage of this crisis and reform our economy. Take control of the natural resources, because natural resources can help us resolve most of the problems that we are facing: the currency depreciation, the fiscal imbalances, even employment generation, and all these things that we have talked about.
Okay.
We can use it to transform our economy.
All right.
Countries have shown us the way. We must go that way.
We're going for a break. When we come back, these big professors and doctors of finance and economy, I'm going to pose these questions to them. On the top of my mind, and also looking at the figures, I know that Ghanaians, I'm talking about indigenous Ghanaians, are not in top shareholdership for the finance sector, the telecom or IT sector as well, and West is the extractive sector. We're talking about oil and gas, mining. So the medium to long-term measures, how do we undertake some form of quasi-nationalization? We're taking a break. When we come back, these questions to these big men right here. After the discussion, we're going to have Johnny Hughes having an interaction with the Director of Elections of the NDC, Elvis Friyankra, who is vying for the position, even though they haven't put up the notice of polls yet, for General Secretary of the opposition party. But Professor John Gachi, in what way do we need to undertake policy considerations for medium to long-term changes to the situation we find ourselves?
Well, I think all the things that we were finding difficult to do, they are supposed to be guided by an inclusive long-term national development plan. And based on that plan, we'll be taking it step by step, and we'll be consolidated against of our investment in infrastructure and other programs for the country. And that is what we need to get back to. The situation where even individual interest becomes national interest is an anathema to good economic management. We need to address those things as a country. The issue about whether or not Ghanaians like made in Ghana is leadership problem. The country is supposed to be led by people and provide orientation that will inure to economic management and gains for the people. So we cannot throw our hands in the air, believing that we'll continue to say that Ghanaians don't like to consume what is made in Ghana. It's all about leadership, it's about orientation. And we can't do that. Issues raised earlier on regarding even what we are getting from our petroleum sector, solid mineral sector, etc. They are all part of leadership choices. We have decided to develop a Petroleum Act at 919, and in Section 10, we have chosen the kind of approach to petroleum exploitation. And we have decided that we want to engage in production sharing, as opposed to what our friends in the MENA countries, that is Middle East and North African countries who are also engaged in petroleum activities are doing. So it's a choice. Therefore, we have to revise all those things as to whether or not it's in the interest of the country. But when we make a choice, we don't come back and assume that it is an imposition on us and we are unawares of the choices we have made. So for me, the point is about an inclusive long-term national development plan. That is what we have failed to appreciate.
Okay. Dr. Sarkodie, So we sack the finance minister and what? Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, the president, he doesn't have the guts for it because he hasn't listened to any call so far. But even if that is done, is that the first step towards a bigger solution, or it has to be at a broad stakeholder table, discussed, and then we get to know our way forward?
You're asking me a political question.
No, it's an economic question.
I think
he mentioned, Professor Gachi mentioned leadership. He said it's a leadership problem we have.
Because
if the leader comes to tell me that
we are in economic crisis, and the leadership must admit it and strategize. You can either change the personnel or change your strategy. If you are playing a football, you are losing. If either you change your striker, you tell the striker to shoot on sight. So either you change the personnel or you change the strategy. If you don't want to change the finance minister, fair enough. But the strategy must be changed. Now there's a time that they should show leadership. They showed it during the COVID time, and we all applauded them.
So in what way should they practically?
They should show it now. First of all, like I said, admit it. Engage with the citizens. Have media engagement. There's so many associations. Guta is there, the Kumasi Traders Association, sit down with them and then tell them that this is the situation and this is the solutions that you're proposing to make sure that everything comes on board. Other than that, then you are not showing leadership. So I think that they should show leadership now, and I believe that they will show it. And then moving forward, we have to nationalize, take control over so many of aspects of the economy, the Ghananization of the Ghanaian economy, as I've heard from history, that we must go back to that principle. In China, they told me that they allowed the foreigners to come and do business with them, and then they took over with time.
When they were ready.
When they were ready. We must adopt that.
But it was with a plan.
Yes. We must have a plan and execute the plan. We need that selfless leader who will put his selfish interests down and put on the national interest.
Nana Addo has only a little over 2 years.
He can do it.
In 2 years.
This is the time that he has nothing to lose. This is the time to do so much. This is the time, if I were him, to take some of the bolder decisions because you have nothing to lose. You are 2 years, then you are off. You go, to rest. So these are the times that he can change. Like I've made it, but I'm repeating it. This is an opportunity for us as a country to embark on strategic reform of the economy, reform in the forest market, reform in the fiscal side, reform in every aspect of the economy, as much as they can within the 2 years that he's gotten. Other than that, then we are just doomed for life. And we can't stay there as a country and look at the problem, stare at the problem, and say, hey, we throw our hands in the air, we can't do anything about it. We must do something about it. This is the urgent call for the IMF program. Whatever the government must do, in addition to all the internal restructuring, we must do well to get the IMF on board. This is a crisis that without the IMF, I'm not sure in the short term, we'll be able to handle this crisis at the financial market. Because the BOG intervened just last week or so by increasing the policy rate. It is not working. People are still moving their funds. So we need the IMF program now. And then beyond that, after we have gotten that stability, beyond that, we must be serious as a country. Reform our national policies, nationalize it, and make sure that we implement it to the letter and stop this selfishness that is in some of the leaders. Because if you go to sign a contract, you take a kickback, you sign a contract, and there's the economy that is losing, you may be enriching yourself, but the whole country may be losing. Fair enough, somebody will call, ask for a judgment debt in most of the contracts that we have signed. Fair enough. If you are not able to change some of the contracts that we have signed already, especially with the extractive sector, then the subsequent discoveries. I understand that we have discovered iron ore in the Volta region. There are new discoveries, oil wells here and there. In our new discoveries, we must make sure, as Prof will say, get the financial muscle, empower Ghanaians, if not the state, but the Ghanaians. I will be happy to have a Ghanaian own about 40% share in most of their big companies. You know, if government cannot do it alone, there are Ghanaians who have funds to do that. I am happy about the Jata Cement, Ibrahim Mahama, and other, Ghanaian individuals who are doing well in businesses. Because after all, these individuals will retain their profit in the country. It's all about the retention. It's all about the retention. So you can get a business running as much as you want. You can get 60%, 100% increment in the profit. But if the profit is not retained, if a greater share of it is not retained in the economy, your city will continue to depreciate.
Okay.
So we need that retention law. And again, I come back to my point. Within the shortest possible time, increase the royalties.
Okay. My points I deduce are we need a national plan immediately. It has to be stakeholder-led, bipartisan, and then civil society, and academia, everybody.
Leadership now.
Then you people are saying that we need to then engage all of us, right?
Yeah.
The segments of the population, and then we communicate to them, hoping that there will be change in behavior.
Sure.
Of course, that include at the policy level, etc. When do we do that, Professor Lord Mensah?
You see,
you have been trumpeting since 2019. When do we do that?
Oh yeah, that's very, very important. You see, if you look at our budget statement, right? Now we're going into November. We'll be reading budget for next year, 2023. Now, 2023, there's going to be drastic measures in our environment.
You mean they're supposed to be?
Yes.
You are envisaging?
Oh yes, because at that point, we're going to position ourselves with, to receive an IMF program. And we know very well that IMF will never come to or rescue an environment where there's what? A distress. And so for the first time, we're going to see a budget which will have a very small budget deficit. So i.e., government is going to spend almost close to what they can generate. So effectively, this is the time the government should come out to tell Ghanaians, to them about it, that we promise you 111, hospitals. You're not going to get that. Because 111, hospitals falls under capital expenditure, which is our discretion. So in that case, they have control over that spending. So in that case, we can say we'll give you 50 instead of 111. So it's about time. I've seen some of the statement from the finance minister giving us a signal of that form, and he also indicated that at least for the first time, we've been able to, cut down discretionary expenditure by 30% in his press briefing. Clearly gives you the signal that at least he's preparing the minds of Ghanaians. Apart from interest payment and salary payment and all those discretionary expenditure, goods and services and all, we have control over them. And it's about time we start hitting on it that Ghanaians will not get as it is expected. If we promise you 10-kilometer road, we cannot provide a 10-kilometer road. We can give you maybe 5 kilometers in the meantime, looking at the situation we find ourselves in. So this is the time. If you ask me when to do that, this is the time before we go into the next budget.
All right. Professor Gachi, in what way should we be doing the decisions? So we have capital expenditure. We look at all our discretionary expenditures as well. So we're saying that wages are things that we have control over.
We don't have control over that.
No. Or other forms of expenditure. So, and I'm saying we have control over because we have to tell our people that perhaps maybe you need to take cuts. Maybe not probably. So, no more four-wheel drive. If you have a four-wheel drive, can we make a decision? I mean, practically, is it possible for Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, the president, and then the finance minister, if he's still maintained, Ken Ofori-Atta, to go to parliament and say that after this budget, all four-wheel drives are supposed to be parked, no more gold coupons for all politically exposed appointed people, and those who are heads of CEOs, etc., those who are in management, no more travels for you, no per diems. If there are per diems, only when it is allowable, even you cut those per diem. Can we take those decisions? And also say that I have 35 ministers, I'm going to maintain 15. I mean, does he have the guts? Can Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, the president, have the guts to tell his finance minister to go to parliament, the plenary, and make that announcement in November?
Well, I do not think that the president has the capacity to demonstrate wide cut in the number of ministers. That would be a great miracle for the economy of Ghana. Because at the time when Ghanaians are expressing misgiving about the large number of ministers, he comes to show what Ghanaians consider abysmal performance as resounding performance, for which they are doing well. So I'm not sure, from what the president has demonstrated so far, it has what it takes to reduce the number of ministers and appointees drastically. And this is not a statement against the president, but it's a statement referable to his demonstration of appreciation of the expression of Ghanaians concerning the size of government. So I do not expect that it will be a miracle for that to happen. But before I come to the substantive question you posed to my colleagues, I think we need to go back and put certain things in perspective so that nobody will cite us as people who are trying to, create a problem against foreign investment interests in the country. I believe what my colleague is talking about is to create a proper space and opportunity, whether in form of in direct investment incentives that we normally give to foreign direct investors, should be extended to our domestic direct investors to occupy the various sensitive space like the telecommunications sector, the extraction sector involving the solid mineral sector, that's gold, manganese, diamond, etc., and the liquid mineral involving oil and gas. I believe that is what my colleague is saying and which I support, and that is what we need to do to extend the control of the economy in the hands of Ghanaians while allowing foreigners to participate in the economic activities of the country. When you use the word nationalization, it connotes that there are existing investment by foreigners that you want to take over, either by force or through some democratic processes, which eventually will be painful to those foreign investors, and they have implications that we don't want to express that. Then again, when you go to the natural resource sector, there is what we call stability clauses in all the agreements. Those stability clauses do not allow you to come up anytime you like to increase royalties that have been negotiated and enshrined in the agreement and ratified by Parliament under Article 268 of the Constitution. So I think we need to just be mindful about some of those particular issues in the natural resource sector when we come to the discussion table. Now, when you look at our budget, as Professor Lord Mensah said, you will see that other discretionary areas are competing with non-discretionary areas. So one of the exercise in this pre-IMF engagement is to ensure to see if government will be able to convince the domestic creditors to have an agreement either to waive some of the payment, to elongate the maturity period, and the essence is to free the amount of interest that you will be paying per budget period, so that you can now divert attention a little bit to those discretionary sector back which are sensitive, like the capital expenditure and the goods and services to ensure efficiency of government
All right.
delivery to the economy.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. As for the economy, the problems are many. So if we want to continue, we can spend the whole day here. But for business news today, make sure that you stay with us, because we're going to tell you inflation rate for September and the implications, whether the Consultative Committee of Prominent Financial Service Professionals said the say for the kind of debt restructuring that we need. And then also we're in Washington. We're monitoring the latest meeting. We have the Bretton Woods institutions meeting our people there, so we'll see how it goes. And actually the rest of the world. And so make sure you stick and stay right here on the channel. I've had Professor Lord Mensah with the University of Ghana Business School, with the Economics Department of the University of Ghana. We also do have Dr. Owusu Sarkodie. Edu Owusu Sarkodie. I mentioned the name right. Obede Pompede. All right. And then Professor John Gachi is the Dean, University of Cape Coast Business School, joining us as well. And it's been a nice conversation. Johnny Hughes is up next with Elvis Efrie Ankra. He's gunning to be General Secretary of the NDC, the biggest opposition party in Ghana. Stay with us.